You're listening to Leadership Recalibrated, where we dismantle outdated leadership playbooks and explore the new way to lead. I'm Lori Lalonde, founder of Her Executive Ascent, and I created this podcast because I was tired of hearing the same recycled advice about what it takes to be a good leader. You know the scripts: be more confident, lean in, develop executive presence. But what if those scripts were written for a leadership model that no longer works? What if the future of leadership looks less like commanding authority and more like strategic influence, emotional intelligence, and authentic power? Each week, we take on the questions most leadership programs avoid, the power dynamics nobody teaches, and the decisions that actually shape your career. This is where you stop following the old rules and start designing the leadership career that fits who you are now and where you're going next. Let's recalibrate. Welcome to Leadership Recalibrated, a leadership insight series by Her Executive Ascent. I'm Lori Lalonde, CEO and founder of Her Executive Ascent. Now, I say this a lot on the show. The rules were not written for us. Today's guest not only figured that out, she left a 20-year corporate career to do something about it. Most leadership advice handed to women is either recycled, watered down, or written by people who have never actually been in the room. Today's guest spent over 2 decades in corporate America figuring that out the hard way, rising all the way to senior vice president at a Fortune 100 company, and then she left to do something about it. Lynsey Mulder now runs multiple businesses, speaks on stages, hosts her own podcast, and works with high achieving women, business owners, and executives who are done waiting for permission to lead on their own terms. She is the person your leadership team calls when they need real talk, not a motivational poster. Her frameworks help leaders get clear on what they stand for, how they communicate, and what they refuse to compromise, so they can stop surviving the room and start owning it. This is one of those conversations that reminds you why this show exists. Let's get into it. Welcome to the podcast today, Lynsey. I'm so excited that you're here.
I am so glad to be here. I've been looking forward to this all day.
Me too. And it's such a wonderful way to cap off a busy week. Now, we recently met, and what I've read about you and doing my background research, you've had an amazing career all the way up to SVP at a Fortune 100 company. And now you run multiple businesses. You coach high achieving women and executives, which is near and dear to my heart because this is the time where we have to elevate and empower each other. I'd love to hear more about your journey from that corporate world to your coaching business and how that shaped the way you think about leadership.
Yeah, that's a big question, Lori. That's huge. A little bit about me. So I actually grew up in super small town Iowa. Probably nobody's ever heard of it, but about 300 people. And it's kind of funny because, early on, you start to develop what your strengths are in life. And so the teachers are like, oh my gosh, Lynsey, you talk a lot. You need to go into business. And just the way that my mind operated, they kind of shoved me towards that direction. And so I actually chose my college based upon how many abroads programs they offered because I knew that that was my pathway to go into business, but I had so many other things that I wanted to uncover and discover in life. So I went to a liberal arts school, got my business management degree, but I only graduated because I took a lot of art classes. And I did do some of the abroads programs, which were amazing. Then you graduate with this degree and you have to get a job in that degree. So I went into business management. I did a really good job. I got promoted, did a good job, got promoted. People would start calling me, hey, come work for us. We have some work that we need done. And so I would go there. And I will tell you that all of a sudden I wake up and I did love my job. I mean, I had an amazing team. I was traveling the nation, doing all kinds of amazing things. And yet, all of a sudden, I'm sitting in my office and I'm this SVP, and I'm thinking, there just has to be something else. There has to be something more. And it was really because I knew I had these passions, and I've always felt like I had this intentional purpose in my life that I needed to fulfill. And for me, that is empowering other people. I had gotten my coaching license. Now it's been 30 years ago, my first one. I have four coaching licenses now, but the first one I had gotten early on, but nobody even knew what coaching was. So I just did it on the side and as part of my role in corporate America. But I knew that at that point in time, it was time to make a change. Because if I didn't do it now, I probably was never going to do it. And I tell you, it's a tough decision to make, but one of the best ones that I've ever made.
Oh, yes. I wanna hear more about that. What was I guess, the straw that broke the camel's back that said, like, "I have to do this now?"
Yeah, well, I got the kick that a lot of people get. It's kind of funny that you asked that question because for probably 5 years, I had known I was going to do it. But the title, the money, I'll just stay till my bonus in March. Whatever that looks like, we all feel like we have this handcuff to our corporate positions, and we don't realize that there's weight that comes with that. And so my health had been suffering. I constantly felt like I had a million pounds on my shoulders. I don't know, your listeners can probably relate to some of that, where it's just that added pressure. You know, you're not doing everything that you were intended to do, and you're not completely fulfilling your purpose. But that chatter in the back of your head that, oh my gosh, but if I do it right now, I won't be able to travel. I won't be able to go out on the weekend. I won't be able to do anything. We let these false beliefs enter into our brain, and they're actually not even true. But to answer your specific question, I was in North Carolina and I was getting ready to go up on stage, and I get this message that, hey, can you grab everybody from your channel and come into this room? And so we all know what that means. HR shows up on the Zoom thing. They read a 20-second script that says, we're shutting down your channel and seek out your senior leaders for direction. And so immediately everybody looked at me, and I had people that had been there 30 years and they've got teary eyes. They don't know what they're going to do. The fear sets into everyone. And I basically said, go back out to this event. You're going to learn a lot for your resume. It's going to be fantastic. I don't know any more than you, but we're going to figure it out. And then as people were leaving the room, all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, I'm not upset. I actually was kind of giddy and I felt a little bit guilty feeling that way, but it was God's push for me to say, this is the time, this is when you need to go do it. And I'll tell you, I had a lot of moments where I'm like, oh, it would be a lot easier just to go find another job. I could definitely do this. This is good positioning. But it was the absolute right time. And I stayed on for another year to close that channel down and was able to build my current business up to what it is today.
Wow. Yeah, sometimes the universe decides for us,
Yeah.
and I feel that so much of what you said resonates. There's a lot of it that I can think back to specific moments in time where I had those same feelings. So when I was laid off from Microsoft, I wasn't upset, I was giddy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was upset for everyone else, received their layoff notices because I know that they were upset. But for me, I was actually excited about it because I thought, "Oh, this is the first time I'll be able to have a break, reassess, and do, something different." But for me, I didn't listen, to this kick that the universe gave me. I went back into corporate, and it was about a year and a half later that I was like, "Yeah, yeah, no, I can't be doing this anymore," and just walked away from it. A lot of what you said was so true, right? It's the fear of letting go of the steady paycheck. It's the uncertainty of what is it going to look like if I do something and how long is it going to take me to get it up off the ground running? And we both are in a similar space as far as empowering women. What made you decide that that was the direction that you wanted to go in?
That has always been on my heart, always. Mentoring younger women, helping them to see their strengths when they can't see them. We know only 20% of the nation actually knows what their superpower is and does it every single day. And a lot of that is simply because we're blind to it. And we're so close to the things that we're really good at that we don't recognize that there are superpowers. Or we let that same mind chatter take over, and if somebody gives you a compliment, we poo poo it or we compare it to the next person rather than assuming that and taking accountability. And so throughout my life, I've had an opportunity to actually start a nonprofit organization that helped women to be able to provide for their families, their newborn infants, all the way up to age 2, provide for them so that they didn't have to worry about that and they could better their careers and build themselves. I've always been involved in volunteer organizations that do that same thing. And what I found, and I think Lori, we talked about this. What we found is that as you advance in your career, it gets lonelier and lonelier and lonelier. All of a sudden, you don't have anyone giving you daily direction. You don't have anyone willing to mentor you. You get more nervous to be able to speak up and say, hey, I need help, because you feel like you should be able to do it. or you get nervous to admit that you don't know how because you worry about the reflection from your performance review or from your peers. And so that loneliness in those senior roles is when I said, I really need to tailor the work that I do to help those people because they still need the support. Our just current society structure doesn't provide for it.
Oh, yeah, I know. I think what's infuriating for me from what I've seen too is even the advice that women were given throughout their careers was not advice that really would take them far. It was advice that would keep them complacent.
Yes. I don't know
It
if we talked about this. I have to tell you this. I don't usually share this on a podcast. So, one of my very first jobs was when I kind of you go past the manager and you're into a lot of companies have director level or senior management. This is like 20 years ago, right? And they for that level, they had special training that they put people in. And so when we got upstairs to this special training, they actually took the boys and put them in one room, and they took the girls and put them in the other room. And I thought, okay, I feel like we're back in middle school going through this training. Our training included things like how to erase the chalkboard, because if you went side to side, you wiggled your butt and you would distract the men in the room. It included how not to cry in a meeting. So if you actually picked up your water bottle and you took a drink, it stops your tear ducts for working. Or if you're standing up presenting, you squeeze your butt cheeks so that you can't cry. So any fellow speakers out there, if you're emotional on stage, squeeze your butt cheeks because you can't cry. It was things like that, and I left thinking, "What did the men just get trained on?" Because I guarantee you that they were not trained on this stuff. And so what that told me is as a female leader back then, and I was very young, I had to figure out, how do I conform to be this persona that they want me to be? And so I actually looked forward to male leaders to say, "Okay, I need to copy what they're doing." And when I had someone compliment me and say, "Man, you lead just like a man does," I thought, "Oh, that's such a compliment." And it wasn't until many, many years, too many years later, that I realized, wait a minute, I am a female leader. I have some pretty darn amazing superpowers that I need to be using every day that come from me being a woman and understanding what people need and how to identify their strengths and just all of those dynamics that enter being a female. And so our society has shifted, but when you talk about that, that's exactly the experience that I had early on in my career.
Man, if I was in training like that early in my career, I probably would have flipped the bird at whoever was teaching it and walked out because I've never been one to be complacent or compliant, and things like that would just spark the rebel in me to be like, no goddamn way. If I wanna cry, I'm gonna cry, you know? And if I
But
wanna do this, I'm gonna do that, and who cares if I'm like, how I erase the chalkboard? Yeah, I would've lost it. I would've lost my
and
mind.
I wanted to, but think about this. Think about how many women, they're in their
Yeah.
first big role. Their
Yeah.
parents just gave them a pat on the back. Their partner, their spouse is super excited for them. They're really proud of the position that they're in, and they enter into a training like this. And immediately, as a female, we're like, okay, I can't be everything that I thought I could be. It is the
Wow.
complete wrong message because
Yeah.
what I would want women to know is you are hired because you are freaking amazing. You connect to people differently than a male does. You have these powers within you that you should be proud of who you are, and we should never conform the way that it was taught 20, 25 years ago. But when you first enter, those are the things that you're thinking about. And you and I now, both of us would be like, "What? That's not a chance. Peace out." But when you're a lot younger, when you're 24, 25 years old, you pause and you take it because you just told everybody you got a great job and you're so
Yeah.
proud of it, even though this is what you feel like you have to do.
That's wild. But
Yeah.
yes, what a shift, what a change just to think back, to how different things were, 20, 30 years ago. I even remember one of the interviews I was in, the person walked into the room, he took one look at me, and he walked out, and then he came back in and he's like, "Are you sure you're in the right room?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm here for an interview." And he's like, "Oh, well, I'm waiting to interview somebody as well." And then I'm like, "Okay." And then he said who he was waiting for. I'm like, "Yeah, that's me." And he's like, "Really? You?" And because I was young
Oh,
and attractive and I was in software dev, and that didn't track with him apparently, like, he was shocked. And so we went through the interview and clearly, like, things went well. They hired me, and I think they hired me just to see, like, it was kind of like this experiment.
we're gonna test her out. We're gonna see if it works.
And when I actually was able to contribute and I was a solid member of the team and I get to my year-end review, he apologized because he had shared with me at that moment that I was paid $25,000 less than
Wow.
anyone else hired in that role, and that they had hired me on a whim just to see if I was actually gonna work out. And he apologized, and he had made it right by upping my salary to what it should be, and then they had given me an additional bonus to make up for the loss that I had the year before. Not the 25,000, but
Good.
still, it was like 8,000, so it was something. It was like,
Yeah.
that's when someone shows up, steps up, and said, "I was wrong, I made a mistake. We hired you for laughs, but turns out you're amazing."
Yeah, I think that that right there is worth unpacking because that's a great leader, and I don't mean what he initially did to you, but what he did do is he owned up to it. He had
Yes.
self-awareness for the mistakes that he made, and he worked really hard to make it right,
Oh, yeah.
and those are great those are attributes that I would wanna follow, those would be people that you would go, "Okay, if you leave the company, I'll consider going wherever you're going," because you know that now they have self-awareness around it, and they're not gonna repeat that mistake again.
Percent. And it was funny because when he shared that with me, I was so grateful. I was so excited. I'm like, "Thank you so much. This is amazing." Like getting this amazing raise and the bonus. And he's like, "You're not mad?" And I'm like, "No, you fixed it. You admitted what happened and you fixed it." I said, "If I would have found out from one of my peers
Oh, yeah.
and you didn't say anything and you didn't fix it, okay, I would have been mad, but you're making it right now, and I appreciate that, and thank you so much, and I'm glad you see my value." And I think that was also the point where I still felt that, "Oh, see, like, it works. You put your head down, you work hard, and you're gonna be rewarded." And in my 30 years, I think that was one of 2 cases where that was true. So that was one case, and then the other case was, like, working later on in my career at Microsoft, where I received a really great bonus because I had a really great year. And the rest of the time was the experience was squeezing as much work out of me while paying me as little as possible
Mhm. Yes. And I
without me
think some of
realizing
that,
that.
I would say one of the things that I implemented as a leader is that I always used a standard form for one-on-ones. And I think that is more important now than ever before. And so let me share a little bit about why. In the one-on-ones, they would always have to come in with, what did you do last week? What are your issues? What are the opportunities that you see for you or for the team? And what's your plan for next week? And the reason why I think this is so important right now is because our world is moving faster than ever before, and we have less connection than we've ever had in the history. We've got people that are even if they go in the office, they're actually sitting on Zoom meetings all day long. They never have human interaction. So you don't see if somebody's legs twitching to be nervous. As a leader, you actually don't see what your employees are doing 80% of their day. You only see about 20% of what they're doing. And so if you don't have something standard in place as a leader that creates that connection point. So if you think about last week, you just basically covered their performance review. Record that. And then at the end of the year, their performance review is written, right? Because you know what they did last week. When they're bringing up issues and opportunities, you have a chance as a leader to help them solve them faster. You help them to grow development in their development plan if they're going after opportunities. You can make sure they only come to you with solutions and recommendations and all of that kind of stuff to show their thought leadership. There's ways that you can use those two categories. And then when you think about what you're doing next week, you as a leader get the opportunity to make sure their prioritization is correctly, make sure they're within their work capacity, see if you have an opportunity to give them stretch goals any of that kind of stuff. And too often we sit back, and this is what I see from my clients. They'll come to me and they'll say, I'm really frustrated because my boss doesn't know what I'm doing. And I say, well, how are you controlling your one on ones? And they say, well, I just listen to what they say. And it's like, no, you have to own up to your side of it. Come prepared. Tell them everything that you're doing. Make sure that you're suggesting opportunities to allow you to grow. We have to own that piece, and that simple form, it's called a lion. Last week, issues, opportunities next week. That's it. That simple structure every single week, make sure that you're going to get the opportunities that are in front of you. It sets that RAS. We just aren't in a world anymore where leaders can see what their teams are doing and then give them credit. Now we have to raise our voice to show what we're doing to get that credit.
God, yes. It's so true. And I remember when I first had to go into a one-on-one with my manager, I'm like, what is this even for? Because early on in my career, I mean, that wasn't a thing. And then eventually it became a thing. And I was like, I don't even know what this is for. And I just was like, well, I'll just share what I've been doing. But I didn't think of it as an opportunity for me to ask for things or me to position for, hey, I want this training or this is the direction I want to go in. I didn't think about it that way. I would always voice what I wanted to do. If I wanted something different, I would voice it regardless. But I didn't think of one on ones as being in service to my career and myself and an opportunity for me to do that with my manager. And it wasn't until later in my career that I learned that. And then when I became a manager, it became so important to instill that because I still saw people coming into the one-on-ones and they're just spewing a laundry list, giving so much detail that I don't need to know. And it's like, I just need these basic things, but that's for team stand-ups. This is your one-on-one. So this is what we're going to talk about. And I ended up creating and it was, an idea from another manager, and I loved it. I created one-on-one private channels and teams.
Yes.
So, that was for me and the individual on the team to have a private communications space so that even in between one-on-ones, they could post questions in there, they could upload kudos or things that they got that they don't wanna forget about. It was like a living journal essentially for them to go back and use for their performance reviews. We would document what we talked about on one-on-ones and next steps. And so it became this additional form of communication that extended beyond just the one-on-ones that we would have, whether it was weekly or biweekly, but helped me to get a full picture of all the things that they were doing, giving them a space to ask at any time anything that they needed instead of waiting for the one-on-one. And then yes, and surfacing stretch projects or challenge projects that they wanted to be on or high visibility projects, and then finding opportunities to make that happen for them.
That that's gold. That tip right there is gold. I just read, Gallup had a new survey that came out recently, and, what I'm gonna tell you a few of the statistics. So they said now employees globally are engaged at work at the same as the pandemic low. So only
Oof.
21% of people are actually engaged at work. Then it went on to say 30% of US workers feel invisible, 27% just feel flat out ignored. Almost 70% of people feel like they're not appreciated at work. All of those metrics are an indicator of one thing: the source is the manager. So
Yeah.
the tip that you just gave, creating that one-on-one link, that makes them feel like they've been seen, overcomes being invisible. It makes them know that they're not ignored. It creates that engagement that happens. If they're putting kudos in there, you can give them appreciation immediately. Like what you
Yep.
just shared overcomes all three of those statistics.
Oh, yeah, and I can't take credit because, like I said, there was another colleague that was doing it. I thought, "That's golden. I wanna do that." When I got into my first people leadership role, that's what I did, and it worked so well because it shows that and that's something that I would tell the team all the time, "I'm here for you. I work for you. It's not the other way around.
Yeah.
So if you have a blocker, if you have an issue, if you need any support, that's what I'm here for." That's how I positioned it, and that's how I've been carrying that forward as a leader. But in those spaces, there are some people who embrace that, and then there are people who just used it minimally, but everyone's wired differently. But you have and this may be like a completely separate topic, but you have a framework called BANK.
Uh-huh.
and it helps leaders understand how different people are wired to make decisions. So I really want to learn more about that. And how does that change the way that women move through corporate?
Yeah, I use a code breaker technology. And so it's something that I do a lot of my keynotes around, a lot of my workshops and trainings that I go to organizations. This is exactly what I teach them. So, code breaker technology is scientifically proven to increase communication so that you can actually be heard. I always joke our family travels the whole world. And when we travel, we fully expect that the languages that we're speaking, we might have miscommunication. But reality is, that's just Tuesday at work for most people. We know 86% of mistakes that happen in the workplace are simply due to miscommunication. That's it. It's not talent, it's not a skill set, it's not expectations, it's not any of that. It's just miscommunication. And usually it's because we're speaking so that the other person can't even hear us. And so, what I've found is when I can go in and talk to people about BANK, which actually stands for Blueprint, Action, Nurturer, and Knowledge. And so, we all have all four of those inside of us, but we have one that's dominant. We have one that comes out when we're stressed out. And when I can teach people about those profiles, then what happens is we can change our language so that we can actually be heard. We can pull that piece out to have the conversation. So even in what you just shared about the Slack channel, you're going to have some people that when they reply, you have to really put the nurturer side on. Oh my goodness, you have to tell a story. You need to ask about their weekend and their kids. You need to ask how they felt. Where if it was someone that their dominant was action, you would want to reply pretty short and succinctly because an action person thinks in bullet points. And so you want to make sure that you're talking to them in the way that they can be heard. As leaders, I just read something the other day that said the number one skill that recruiters are looking for is communication skills. And that's exactly what bank does is teaches you how to communicate with other people to be able to elevate your communication skills and then improve the workforce or your relationships. You know, we're all in relationships, whether it's kids, parents, a spouse, all of it transitions over to that as well.
Oh my goodness. So, how do you know which characteristic of bank that someone is leaning towards? Are there signs? Like, how do I know someone leans more into blueprint versus action or versus
Yeah.
knowledge?
It's funny because we do have a whole day summit that we teach people how to quickly identify. So, in 90 seconds or less, you can identify. And then we have another all day summit that teaches people the framework of the methodology so that you know how to transition, you know, your dark side of your code, all of those kind of stuff. But I want to give you just a few things. First of all, let's put in the show notes for your listeners, let's put a link so that they can actually crack their own code. And when they do that, we'll send them a report that will be able to help them to understand their code a little bit better, but more importantly, how to understand other people's codes. But to answer your question, okay, here's one of the fun things. So we've all been to networking. You love networking, right, Lori?
Oh, yes, yes.
We've all done networking, and networking could just be in the cafeteria at your company and you're meeting someone new, or it could be, you know, at an actual networking event at your local chamber or a conference or whatever that might be. So, you know, actually, when somebody walks up to you, what kind of style they are. So, for example, if you walk up and someone is they're very put together. I always think of these as the guys in blue jeans with the great sports coats. And so they're very put together and they reach out with that professional handshake and they're looking you directly in the eye and they introduce with their title. That is someone who is actually a blueprint. We know that they like structure, they like processes. They're probably the person who follows the rules. You know, they'll go 7 miles an hour over the speed limit, but not eight because they like to follow the rules. They love to understand your title and what your expertise is. And but when you really think about them, like they're the people that are, if you think about a box, they're the people that are inside the box, right?
Yes.
And if you walk up to someone else like me, because this is what I am, pretty high energy gal, if you walk up to me, you're probably gonna get a high five. Oh my gosh, Lori, it's so great to see you. I'm gonna give you a high five. That indicates that I'm a really action oriented person. So I'm a lot more spontaneous. I like the freedom. I'm going to be one of those people that's constantly looking for opportunities. I get easily excited. I want to jump around and have a lot of fun. Again, I think in bullet points, like we're much faster to make decisions. So if
Love
you
it.
think of that box again, we're the people outside the box. Now we need the blueprints in the box because they need to show us how to actually make it happen and follow the processes and rules, but we're kind of outside the box, right? And then the third one, if you walk up to someone and you get the great big hug, or if they shake your hand, they do shake your hand, and they put their other hand on top. Have you ever had that happen?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because they need the full circle of energy to go in and out of them through the other person because they're actually after a soul connection. So they want the touching. They're our nurturers. And they're the people that they would much more take community and relationships and teamwork over money or any of those kinds of benefits. They're the people that you want them when you're doing change management because they're always thinking about how is this going to impact the team and do we have the right people involved? They're also the people that will buy because they like you or because you are promoting one of the charities that they like. So when you think about their nurturers, they're all about relationships. And as you can
Yeah,
see, you can't have a business without them. Like,
yeah.
they're the people that are gonna hold the team together. They're the glue for your team. When you think about then the last code is knowledge, which they're the ones that are giving us AI right now. They give us all of our technology. They like the research and the development, and they like to be able to go and dig really deep and learn a whole bunch of things. They are usually experts. And so you never want to argue with a knowledge person. You do want to debate. So I always explain them before I explain their handshake because my oldest son is actually a knowledge person. So if I give him a hug, he's just stiff as a board because our knowledge people don't want that human interaction. They would prefer to be kind of in the technology space. So they're the people when you go to shake their hand, so you walk up and you go to shake their hand, and they actually slip their business card to you instead. So you're not actually touching them, right?
Oh, wow.
They're also the people that if you're in a sales role, they're the only role that if they say, I need to think about it, they're the only role that actually does need to think about it because you have to give them space and time to go back and do their own research and make sure that you are the best option for them.
Yeah.
So that's just a really easy, quick way to kind of explain what the differences are. But when you think about it, if I come in on fire, because I have a lot of energy. So when I do keynotes, I am all over it. And I could easily be the person that they would go, wow, she is a lot.
Oh
She
my
needs
god,
to,
I get that too.
yes, she needs to simmer down. She's
I
a
can be a
lot,
lot
right?
for some people.
If we come in that way all the time, we could easily scare off the other three personality traits. So, as a leader, I had to recognize I can't be that person all of the time. If I have someone who is much more a nurturer, I need to be able to open up to them. I need to be authentic and let them know who I am. They need to learn a little bit. I've raised four boys. They need to learn about my boys' life to be able to have that connection for me to lead them very well. Or if it's a blueprint and I'm going into that one on one, I need to give them a process. They need to know here's the four things that we're going to cover. I am going to take 20% to be able to give you feedback. I want you actually to drive the other 80% of the conversation. Here's the process that we're going to use. It gives them a risk free zone for them to be able to operate in. And that's when you're going to get your best work from a blueprint. So when you're able to kind of shift, it doesn't mean that I'm not being authentic. I'm just choosing to pull that piece of myself out to be able to communicate as best as possible with the person that's in front of me.
Well, yeah, we have to tailor our communication in a way that the other person is able to receive it because we've seen what happens when there is that mismatch, right? People are talking at each other, but no one's really listening and no one's really receiving the messages. I would love to hear from your perspective when you see that mismatch. What's happening when that leader is communicating in their natural style and not realizing that the person across the table needs something completely different from them? What happens in that moment?
Well, that's exactly where the miscommunication happens and action takes place that should not. I'll never forget this. This has been years ago, probably a decade ago. And I had a team meeting, and my team could sign up to present things they were working on or to get decisions or anything that the team would know. And so they could block off how much time on the agenda that they needed. And so they put on the agenda a topic, and I don't remember what the topic isn't relevant right now, but they'd put it on and they're up presenting this information. And I'm staring, listening, thinking, why on earth are they working on this? Who gave them permission to work on this? And so we went on. It was actually a great topic. They had worked on it, and so afterwards in a one-on-one, I asked the person who was presenting, and I said, "Okay, where did that stem from? Whose idea? What happened?" And they said, "Well, you told us to do it." And I went, "What?" And it was literally a comment that I had made in passing 2 months earlier. Just a comment that, "Hey, we should do this." And they took it as, "Yes, we absolutely need to do it." And they went and spent hours and hours and hours of time
Oh,
working on this. Now, we did proceed. It was a fantastic idea. But just think about it. If that was not something that we wanted to do, I just decreased corporate profitability. My team's capacity was just impacted, all because it was just a comment that I made in passing. And so that was the moment that I realized I need people to understand my personality. So I was really good at acquiring other teams. And so when I would acquire teams or even onboarding of new employees, I would say, "Hey, I need you to know about me. I'm very action oriented. I think in bullet points. If you send me an email, I will read 2, maybe 3 lines. If it's more than that, we need to have a conversation. If I reply really quickly with 1 or 2 words, it's because I want you to have the information you need, not because I'm being mean to you or I'm mad at you or I don't want to hear about your family, but I want you to be able to do your job really well. And if I make a comment in passing, I need you to stop and say, do you want me to put hours on this? Because I have so many ideas that I want our team to do, but I need help in making sure that we're going after the top priorities." And so I did spend a lot of time saying, "Hey, here's my personality. Now tell me about yours, because I want to understand how best to work with you." Because to your point, when those misfires happen, nobody recognizes it until it's too late, until the person
yeah.
says, "I'm leaving because I don't like the culture here, because you don't appreciate me, because you don't listen to me." And it's a lot of times because we're just too busy. And so we don't have that awareness inside of us to go, wait a minute. They just sat back in their chair. They just folded their arms. Their answer is constantly busy to when you say, "How's your day?" And they say, "Busy." If that's always their answer, you're burning them out. They're overwhelmed. We need to make sure that we have self awareness of the people that are around us to be able to guide them. I think that's one of our primary jobs. And it doesn't matter if you're a mom, that's your primary job, or if you're a senior vice president, that's your primary job. We should be guiding the people and mentoring them around us and noticing those things even when they don't.
100%. Absolutely. And that should be the priority, right? People first, because people are what drive the results and they need to be nurtured. And I'm a natural nurturer, but I still see some types of me in the knowledge side too. So I feel like there's like a blurred line there. But I want to ask about that. So is there a specific bank type that high achieving women most commonly are?
Yeah, here's what I would say. The women that are aware of their communication style and how to shift in and out of someone else's, those are the high achieving women. So it's not necessarily your code. Like I think we've talked, we have similar codes. And so our first step is awareness of what you actually are. Because if I know, if I come in with action all the time, like I said, I'm going to turn people off. But being able to recognize someone else's and shift into it, because we all have those pieces inside of us, that's where high achievement comes in. And so it's not necessarily that you have a certain code, that your pattern is different with other people. It's recognition of it, how to actually use it, and then how to use it so that you can communicate with other people. I'll just give you an example. So, in my last couple years at corporate America, I actually shifted leaders. We had someone who had been my leader for quite some time, and he retired and moved on, and then we got a new leader. Their styles were completely different. One was very action oriented. So when I would talk to him, I would get about 3 bullet points. So I needed to make sure that I was very succinct in what I needed, the decisions that I was after, what information I needed him to be able to do my job. The next leader was very much a nurturer. And so he really did. When he asked, "How was my family? How was my weekend?" He really wanted to know. And so I could spend the time getting to know him at that level before I jumped into business. If with him, I just came in with those same 3 bullet points, he would think that I wasn't very personable. He would think that I didn't care about the team at the level that people actually build relationships at. And so being able to shift and pull that nurture side out became the communication point or the connection point that actually allowed me to elevate in that position. So the shifting is what's more important than what your actual code is.
Yes. So in essence, a bit of that emotional intelligence, that awareness, and understanding to how to adapt to the person that you're communicating with. What does that look like when you're in a room with various types
Yeah.
and you're leading that meeting?
I know. I work with a lot of salespeople to increase their sales, and I had somebody say, "Okay, I had a couple come in, and the wife was very nurturing, and the husband was very action oriented." And he said, "I was really struggling to balance." And reality is that's what we have all of the time because we have all personalities around us at any given time. And so if you're presenting, so if I'm doing a keynote, I have to make sure I'm doing a combination of all of the codes, or if I'm in training, I have to make sure that I'm touching all of them. So when you're giving those debriefs at work, so say you're in front of the team and you're giving the overview of the work that you're doing, or you're in a sales role and you're making that position, you need to make sure, first of all, that you know what codes you have in the room. And then, second of all, you've bundled all of that together. So, for example, if I'm going into a team meeting, if I know I've got knowledge people in the room, I actually need to give them the data and the information in advance so that they can look at it, review it. Again, we said they have to have time to think about it. So they need the information in advance. Then we think about our blueprints. They're the people that want the processes. So they like your agenda, all of that. I will tell you, do not put times on the agenda because if you're 1 minute off, then you're late. So don't do that. But create the agenda so that they know here's what I should expect. I have predictability in this meeting. From a nurturer standpoint, you either set it up that you're going to have time to chat beforehand or time to chat after. You want to make sure that you told them you're going to have space to be able to make those connections, but mostly you want to make sure that they see you're involving every single person in the room. Remember, we talked about involvement and relationships. So you need to be asking, hey, what do you think about this? And I know you have expertise in this area. How can we use that expertise to help this project move forward? So that involvement is really important. But then from the action perspective, they need to know right away what's the mission we're actually trying to accomplish? What's the why that we're here? So if we have a big meeting like that, we're here today to make the decision on are we moving forward with this? Or the one thing that we need to be making a recommendation on is X because they need to know exactly what we're after in this meeting and what we need to accomplish. So there's easy ways that you can plug in little details for all four of the codes to make sure that you're successful. In the showroom, my sales guy, he's a car auto salesman. I said, here's what you need to do. You need to have one of your buddies come in, take the action oriented husband, and go out and look at the features of the car while you ask the wife about their family and their weekend.
Oh,
When he's
yeah.
done with the action and comes back in, now you can talk about the purchase of the vehicle. So in that situation, I said, I'm encouraging you to fill both of their needs really quickly, which means you need to bring a buddy in to be able to help you with it.
Well, that's sleek. I like that.
It's funny, my husband is a knowledge, so he wants all the details. So when we buy a car, he shops and shops for weeks and weeks and weeks to find the best one. And I just tell him, let me know when the paperwork needs signed. I'll schedule 15 minutes and I'll go sign it because that's
I
how it
love
has to
that.
work. Yeah,
Yeah, he's already evaluated, and if he's gives a thumbs up, it's good to go.
exactly.
Oh my goodness, I love it. Because yeah, I don't like sitting for hours in car dealerships at all. So you mentioned earlier that you have a retreat where this is something that, people will learn during the retreat and walk away with. So can you share more details about what the retreat is, what it looks like, and how this is incorporated in it?
Yeah. We do a virtual one that's 90 minutes. And so anybody from anywhere in the world can actually join. And that's going to give you some of the overview and foundation. You will actually leave with skill sets that will change your life, to be honest. And so we can put a link to an upcoming one in the show notes for people to be able to join. But we also do all day summits. And so there's an all day one that is on communication and sales. There's an all day one that's the speed coding one. That's the fun one where you'll be able to tell from what they're driving, what they're wearing, what their office looks like, what their house looks like, how they shake your hand, all of those kinds of things. That's an all day one as well that really teaches you the speed coding aspect. And then the last one is all around relationships. How do you be a better parent? How do you be a better spouse? Or how do you heal relationships with someone in your life that probably happened simply because you were speaking a different code? And so we give you a lot of information on how to build those relationships and sustain those relationships. We do several a year, and so people can sign up based on their calendar, which one's best for them and which one will work best into their timing.
Oh, I love that so much. And I think more and more people are looking for those in-person retreats, those points of, opportunities for in-person connection and a shared experience. So I love that you're doing this and that you're hosting it multiple times throughout the year. It's not just one and done. So I love that. And these would be hosted in Iowa?
Yeah, most of those are in Iowa, but we actually have people all over the nation. And then we do a special one that is just for women in leadership twice a year. And that one is actually at a resort. So that is a little bit of bank the communication stuff we just talked about, but it's also about how to be a good leader. We talk about balance and we give you tactical things based upon your needs, how to stop the chatter, how to increase your voice through your communication, whether that be writing or speaking, little executive presence nuggets that you can take along. All at a space where we also offer things like a sound bath and meditation. And if you choose to, you could do yoga or a hike or a retreat. These are places that you can really build strong connections with other women and really build up your board of directors because that's what we need to not be lonely in our roles. And so we offer that twice a year. Our next one is coming up not until the fall, unfortunately, but we can make sure that your listeners have information that would be able to lead them to that because it's amazing. It is the best week that you will ever spend. And I know as women we're so hesitant to invest in ourselves, but when you invest in yourself, you're also investing in every single person that you come in contact with because you've created that clarity and focus to be able to be bolder, to use your voice more, and to be able to move through life with confidence.
And that is so true. And even just to have a space where you're focused on your well-being, resetting and then connecting. I think there's something powerful in connecting with other women who are on a similar journey or who have some shared experiences and building up that community that way. Because a lot of times we do feel that we are fighting the good fight on our own because we are taking care of everybody around us and we are so busy and we usually put ourselves last. And at this stage of my life, I started putting myself first. And it's hilarious to see the reactions that I get from my loved ones around me when I do that, because that's not how I've been for the majority of my life. But now I'm actually saying, you know what? No, I'm going to put me first and I'm going to do what I want to do and I'm going to go where I want to go.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and I'm going to, treat myself to this and invest in this, and I'm a happier, healthier person because of it.
Yeah. I think too, we often think, and I know I did this for years. I have a ton of friends. I have an absolutely amazing tribe. I really do. My friends will cheer me on with anything in my life, even when it's a terrible idea. So my friends are not the ones in business that are going to go, Lindsay, you really shouldn't do that. I need that board of director, that connection with people like you. I mean, this is one of the things that I love about you is we can have a conversation and we can banter back and forth and you could say, that's a silly idea. How about you think about it like this? Or have you considered this? That's what these kinds of connections are about. They're really to build you up. When you say, I'm going to make a commitment, your friends will say things like, oh, you can do it. You make everything worse. That's amazing. And
Yeah.
you need people to challenge you and go, okay, think about that differently. How can you break it in micro steps? How can you do that? That's what this personal board of director, the connections that you make will do for you.
Yes. Yeah, because we definitely don't want to just be told that we're doing everything perfect and right and great, and then nothing's working out the way we're expecting, and we're like, "But I'm doing everything right."
Yeah,
We need women that are in our circles that give us the honest truth and challenge us and push us and get us to think beyond what our initial idea is, because the first idea is never the idea or never
right.
the thing. It's evolves over time and it looks different. And when you're building out a business, it's always about experimenting with different ways and different communication styles, different marketing, everything across the board. It just can't, it can't be a rah, rah, rah. You need the people around you that are going to level set and say, well, I feel this worked and this didn't, and you might want to tweak this. So 100%, and to have people in your life that will do that is so valuable.
Oh,
So
yes.
valuable.
I don't know what I'd do without them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. I love
I'd be
that.
in a corporate job. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my goodness. Don't say that. Yeah. Yeah, so I always like to end the podcast with similar question. It's usually around talking about the old corporate playbook and rules that we want to retire from it. So for the women listening right now who are still playing by the rules that were never written for them, what's one thing from that old corporate playbook you'd want to tell them to stop honoring and what to do instead?
Boy, that's a great question. I had two things that came up right away. One, and I've talked about this on my podcast, not allowing the invisible work tax to come in. And that's when we as women take on tasks that really shouldn't be ours just because we feel like someone needs to do it. If you are a woman who wakes up and goes, somehow I became the yes girl. Everything anything that people give me, I'm constantly saying yes, and now I don't even have time to do my own job. Or all of a sudden, you're the person who consistently is asked to take notes in a meeting. All of those kinds of stuff end up wearing on you, and they're like this invisible work tax that we just can't get rid of. And so I would say I would want people to get extremely clear on what their role is and what their accountabilities are, figure out where they want their next move to be, and only accept the things that are going to help them develop into those roles and do your job really, really well. So I think that bleeds into a lot of things like using your voice, stop conforming, use your superpowers. But I think that's really what I would want people to understand is you don't have to take on an invisible work tax. That's not required of us. You can actually go be the amazing person that you're meant to be in the role that you're in, and you can be developing yourself at the same time.
Yes, 100%. And that is a common trait that I've seen women take on. Like, women naturally will say yes because they are like, well, they're flattered because someone asked them to do it, and then they want to prove that they can do it, or they feel guilty passing it on to somebody else, or all of the above. And it just the list keeps going and going and going, and the higher up in corporate they go, they have no room for the strategic work that they need and to even have the space to think about it because you're drowning in a lot of the task work
It's
that's
so
not even adding any value to the company.
right.
So I love that. Like, women need to start saying no more and be very hypercritical of what they have on their plate and then what they hand off to other people or just drop altogether,
Yeah.
unapologetically.
And I think when we need to reframe no. I love no. It's like this short little word in the
Yeah,
English language, and we all stink at saying it. But
yeah,
when we're saying no, we're actually saying yes to our highest priorities. When we say
yes.
no to that extra project, we're saying yes to showing up for our kids at night. When we say no to leading, the extra meeting, we're saying yes to getting the task that we committed to done on time. So when we say no, I want everybody to realize you're actually saying yes to your highest priorities. Just make sure that you've done the work to know what those priorities are.
What a beautiful note to end on. I love that. I subscribe to that 100%. I love it. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for your time today. We will have all of the links in the show notes for everyone listening so that you can look up the retreat that Lindsay does. Take that, what is it called again?
Which
The thing
thing? The
online.
bank assessment. Yes.
Yep.
Crack
Take
your
the bank.
code.
Yes, crack the code, your bank assessment, and if you want to reach out to Lindsay as well and learn more about the work that she's doing, those will all be in the show notes. Thank you again, Lindsay, for your time today. This was such a great conversation. I think we could have gone a lot longer.
It's always great chatting with you.
Yeah.
We are two peas in a pod, so I love it. Thanks for having me.
Lynsey is the real deal, and that conversation is proof. We could have kept going for hours. And this is exactly why I started this podcast. Conversations like this with women like Lynsey, who have been in the room, done the work, and come out the other side with something real to say. The rules were not written for us. And for a long time, a lot of us followed them anyway. We took on the extra work because someone had to. We said yes when we meant no. We waited to be recognized instead of making sure we were seen. And we called it being a team player when really we were just making ourselves smaller to make everyone else more comfortable. That stops here. Your superpowers are not a liability. Your voice is not a disruption. And no is not a 4-letter word. Every time you say no to something that does not belong on your plate, you are saying yes to the work that actually moves you forward. The leaders who own the room are not the ones who said yes to everything. They are the ones who got ruthlessly clear on what they stood for, how they communicated, and what they refused to compromise on. And they stopped apologizing for it. That is the standard we're building toward on this show, one conversation at a time. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a woman in your network who needs to hear it. Leave a comment and tell me what landed. And if you have a minute, leaving a review helps the show reach more women who are ready to stop surviving the room and start owning it. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next episode. The leadership advice that got many women this far will not necessarily get them where they want to go next. This phase of your career is not about working harder. It's about working strategically by deciding which rules still apply and which ones you are finally ready to outgrow. If this conversation resonated, stay with us, subscribe to the podcast, and join me here every Sunday for new episodes. And if it gave you language for something you've been carrying quietly, share it with another woman in your network who needs to hear it too. Until next time, lead with intention, question everything, and change the rules for the better. I'm Lori Lalonde, and this is Leadership Recalibrated.